stable would have gone up in flames, and the horses with it. Granddad had every right to be enraged with me. It scared me when I realized what I'd done, but despite the spanking I got, it didn't stop me. All youngsters experiment with cigarettes at some time in their lives. Her friend attempted to rationalize Valerie's behavior. In your case, I wouldn't be surprised if you got into trouble just to gain that insensitive man's attention. You don't understand. Valerie sighed and turned to face the woman who had become her friend, her family, and her surrogate mother over the last 7 years. It wasn't just the smoking. I drank his drink until he finally had to lock it up in the safe. I'd take one of his thoroughbred horses and go night riding. I don't know how many times I led a lame horse home after a midnight gallop. They were valuable animals, his livelihood, and I treated them like toys. Children can be thoughtless at times, Clara admitted. Her defense of Valerie was not quite as vigorous as before, but she was still steadfast in her loyalty. There was more. She was driven to make a full confession, needing to expose her guilt. I used to steal money from him to hitchhike into Baltimore and go to the movies or just buy things. Sometimes I'd be gone all weekend, but I never told him where I'd been. Can you imagine what I put him through? You're being too hard on yourself, was the stubborn reply. Don't forget that I know what a frightened, love-starved girl you were when I met you. Love-starved, Valerie repeated thoughtfully. An ache that still hadn't receded after 7 years flickered in her tawny eyes. Perhaps, she conceded, since it was the easiest explanation, but I'll never forget the anguish that was in Granddad's face the day I told him I was pregnant. In her mind's eye, she could still see the look of knife-stabbing pain he had given her. He was such a moral, upright man that he felt shamed and disgraced by what I'd done. When he demanded to know who the father was and I belligerently refused to tell him, it was the last straw that broke him. Tears burned her eyes at the memory of that stormy scene. She hid them in a flurry of activity, hurriedly folding the blouse to her blue suit and laying it in the suitcase. But to throw you out! Clara refused to consider her grandfather's actions as justified. For a long time, I resented him for abandoning me. Even hated him, Valerie admitted. But I was 18. Turning me out was probably the best punishment he could have given, because it made me responsible for myself. Now I know the heartache of worrying over a child, and I only regret that I never had the courage to go back and tell Granddad how sorry I was for the anguish he suffered because of me. And that's your reason for going to his funeral, Clara concluded, crossing her arms in front of her in a stance that suggested disapproval and challenge. It's an empty gesture, don't you think? And a costly one, too, considering the wages you'll lose. Mr. Hanover has given me the time off, and I'm entitled to 2 days off compassionate pay. She tried to dodge the issue as she closed the suitcase and locked it with a decisive snap. What about the other 3 days you'll be taking off? The pointed reminder pinned Valerie to the spot. You won't be getting paid for them? And there's the cost of driving all the way to Maryland, too. I'll just have to cut back on a few things. She was determined not to consider the financial ramifications of her decision to attend her grandfather's funeral. Somehow she'd weather it. Humph. Clara breathed out the sound. You're barely making ends meet now. That's my problem. Valerie opened a second, smaller suitcase and set it on the bed. You can't talk me out of going, Clara. You're just wasting your breath. Walking to the dressing table, she opened a different drawer and took out 6 sets of little boy-sized underpants and socks. When they were in the second suitcase, she began adding pajamas and slacks and shirts. Clara watched in silence for several seconds. Her expression grew...